Anna Simpson here at Risk Minds International in London. Joining me now is Muti Zulu, Chief Risk Officer at Zanaco Plc. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm excited to be at Risk Minds this year.
It's great, isn't it? And you're here at Risk Minds talking about operational resilience. What are the greatest risks to operational resilience currently?
Thank you so much for that question. So what we face right now in Southern Africa, where Zambia is located, I'm from Zambia, is climate change. So what we've seen is we are grappling with the worst drought in 40 years. So because of that, it's a two-pronged sword. So we have agribusinesses under pressure because of lack of precipitation. It hasn't rained in a long time, and at the same time, power generation. So power generation has affected businesses, the banks as well. So we go long hours without power. I think the worst we've ever gone was like 21 hours of no power in a day. And that has improved slightly because now we have stable power between 5 to 7 hours. But what that means is that we have to run off gensets. So if you're running off a genset, we have to burn a lot of diesel and fuel is expensive. So we see geopolitics in our fuel tanks. So when there's volatility in the crude markets, we see it in the price of petroleum, your diesel, your petrol, and all that. So from a resilience perspective, what we tend to see is potential disruption, because if you run a genset for very, very long hours, they tend to pack up. It's expensive, and if they pack up, you can imagine the implications on data centers, the implications on operations. We now have interventions such as rolling out renewable energy solutions, such as solar for ATMs and for branches as well for electricity lighting. So from an operational resilience, because at the end of the day, we're client-centric. The customer doesn't care about whether there's power or not. They just want to transact. So you can see that operational costs are through the roof. There's just something I wanted to speak about. Some of the other factors that then coin into the resilience picture would be everything that's happening on the global scale. I mean, I come from an emerging and a frontier market. So when you get tension in the Middle East and all that, it shapes what crude prices are. And because we don't mine crude, we're just price takers. That, coupled with some of the foreign exchange rate volatility issues, we're seeing depreciation of the currency. Those two factors determine what crude prices would be. So from a disruption perspective, that is what we are pretty much seeing. There's also cybersecurity as well. There's a lot of technology. We've seen digitization rapidly evolve, and because of that, there's been quite integration between telcos, fintechs, and commercial banks at the same time. So because of that, you get cybersecurity opportunities as well. So fraudsters are always looking for opportunities to leverage off and to cause, that causes disruption sometimes. So we're constantly looking for ways of intervening and ensuring that we are resilient enough. So resilience, we're also seeing it from an economic perspective, because at a regulatory point, we see central banks then come in to tighten monetary policy, and that could take the form of very high cash reserve ratios. In Zambia, cash reserve ratio is at 26%, meaning liquidity sometimes is much of a challenge. And if there is no liquidity and you're dealing with climate effects, then automatically credit risks also creep in. How do you lend in the absence of liquidity? Foreign currency issues, like I did mention, we're grappling with supply issues, and because mining hasn't done so well, the outlook is positive, but we've seen quite a bit of investment here and there. So currency depreciation is another issue as well. So banks are really trying to navigate some of these challenges, which are both endogenous and exogenous at the same time, but they affect operational resilience.
And clearly the power issue is a central one, because the country relies so heavily on hydropower.
Yes.
The lack of rainfall is really having a great impact.
Yes.
And what role then does digital transformation play in your overall risk strategy?
Okay, so digital transformation, like you said, can address a plethora of risk factors. From risk monitoring, from fraud risk monitoring, we run real-time fraud detection. That's technology and uses a bit of artificial intelligence to be able to predict patterns, behavioral changes, and at the same time, risk reporting, aggregation of data, all that uses technology and digital transformation. And at the same time, you're looking at other intelligent sources of, managing the landscape and all that, tools that we use for incident management, tools that we use for third-party contract management, and all that are technology-based. And I believe that there is latitude for us to adopt even more because the world is evolving really, really fast. I mean, I attended a session where they were talking about the use of AI to determine risk landscape, and these are some of the solutions that the world is, adopting.
And how does the regulatory framework in Zambia impact your risk management practices?
Okay, so need I mention that we have a listening regulator. So in so doing, I would say we are able to negotiate, we're able to discuss, we are so open that some of the things we face them and go to the regulator and they shape what the landscape should look like. But at the same time, you have a regulator that is looking out to ensure that they are protecting and preserving financial stability. They play a key part in cybersecurity. We have guidelines that have been rolled out, best practice, and how we can protect our crown jewels from a cybersecurity perspective. From a resilience perspective as well, they've taken quite an interesting stance where I think it's very important that all banks must be equipped in terms of power generation. I mean, they've also led the way. I mean, if you visited the central bank today, you'd find that they have solar all over, their car park and all that. And I think in other areas such as compliance is very, very important for money laundering issues because these things have become very, very common. So it's in many ways that they do affect the risk landscape. Sometimes it comes at a cost. I mean, if it's technology related, talking about cloud related issues, it may mean we have to invest in infrastructure. I mean, even cybersecurity. So we try by all means to understand the regulation that is, rolled out and understand what the implications would be from an investment perspective, because we might need to invest in infrastructure to be compliant. And we take that very seriously because anything to do with compliance is your license to operate. So you don't want to be in breach and not be able to operate the following day. Yes.
And how do you approach managing currency risk given the volatility of the Zambian kwacha?
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So I'll start with things that are low-hanging fruit. I would say the first point of call would be to ensure that we advise our clients to match their receivables with their obligations. So for example, if you have a foreign currency loan, you want to match and make sure that your receivables are in the same currency as the loan that you have so that it doesn't put you in a wrong way risk adverse position as well, so that our clients are not in a detrimental position. That's an easy way to do it. So we play an advisory role. We meet with our clients and advise them. The second way is we also sell products that are hedging in nature. Hedging products, I mean, the most vanilla would be forwards. You sell forward contracts, 3 month, 6 month, and nobody ever does 1 year forwards anymore because the landscape is very, very volatile. We also look at it differently. I mean, if a client comes to the bank, they're looking for liquidity. So we try by all means to find the requisite liquidity that the clients are looking for. Because if a client comes to the bank, the expectation is that we should have liquidity, whether local currency or foreign currency. So we also look at other options like getting, credit lines outside with other counterparty and players that would be enable us to be able to lend in foreign currency, and that also helps us manage some of the risks that are faced within the Zambian landscape.
Mutizulu, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for hosting me, and I'm excited to be at Risk Minds this year.
Pleasure to have you.